Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. How can we leverage philanthropy, which is a tendency in each human heart? How can we leverage it to help the poor through microfinance? That's the issue I'm trying to address in this paper. The basic concept is quite simple. People would love to help the poor, but they face two hurdles. Helping the poor requires bearing administrative costs, searching for the eligible recipients, and then if you are financing them, you have to collect. So you have to deliver first the finance sum and then follow up on repayment. Then you face also another risk of loss. For some reason or the other, sometimes a recipient of finance may not be able to pay back. So these two hurdles face every human being who would like to help others financially. This particular proposed Waqf, the monetary Waqf, is structured specifically to address these two hurdles. How can we minimize or eliminate for the average person the cost of administering his help to the poor? And then how can we assure him that he will not lose his money? That is, assure him against the risk of default. So these are the guiding principles around which this particular Waqf was structured. Now, the Waqf suggests to people who would like to help that they can provide loans from their surplus cash. That's the basic idea, because it's a monetary Waqf and its activity is to finance the poor who are able to work. So basically, we have to assure them that they can get their money back whenever they want it. Now, if we think about the poor, we can classify them into two categories. Those unable to work. Of course, for the unable to work poor, like too sick or too old, financing is not a solution because they cannot pay back. So they have to be given transfer payments like Zakat, giving, no return. So the unable to work is not subject of this Waqf. We are only addressing how to help those poor who are able to work and generate income and repay the finance sum later on. Again, we can think of types of help. There are two types. The transfer payment like Zakat, you give it away and it is not returned to you. This represents from the point of view of the giver, the maximum sacrifice. He's giving away without any direct return. Financing, on the other hand, you give now to get back later, at least what you gave. So financing is a lesser sacrifice on the donor. And this is where this particular Waqf is focusing on. We are focusing on financing, which is a lesser sacrifice, but still very helpful to the needy who need a little push. The beneficiaries are the people who are poor, who are able to work. What are the resources of this monetary Waqf? Every Waqf, including the monetary Waqf, needs some initial permanent donations to establish its infrastructure and to be able to, from these donations, to generate sufficient income to cover at least its administrative costs, initial administrative costs. So this monetary Waqf requires an initial jump start by donations of a permanent nature. Those who establish this Waqf will give, maybe someone will provide office space, the other will provide a sum of money. Someone else might say, I will work as secretary or accountant free for the benefit of the Waqf. These are permanent and donations. So this is one type of resource given to the Waqf on a permanent nature. But this Waqf is distinguished by its willingness to accept interest-free loans from lenders. They will be Qard Hasan, interest-free loan. So the lenders to the Waqf give money temporarily, which the Waqf uses along with whatever other permanent funds it has to finance, to provide microfinance to recipients. Now, Waqf will guarantee repayment to those who loaned the Waqf. The lenders to the Waqf are guaranteed repayment anytime they want. Now, we need for this Waqf two types of guarantors. One, guarantors of losses. Some of the money provided as finance will not come back for one reason or another. If we take the example of Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, they have a rate of return, not rate of return, I mean repayment more than 90%, more than 95%, which is very good. So basically, if 5% of recipients of finance do not pay back for some reason or the other, we need to cover these losses. The guarantors of losses will do that whenever the fund, the Waqf sustains a loss because of default on the part of recipient, the guarantors will cover it up by a donation. So this protects the lenders to the fund, protects them from risk of default. Also, the fund may face a liquidity shortage occasionally. So we need the guarantor of liquidity who will, when the monetary fund needs liquidity, they will lend him on demand a certain sum of money. Each guarantor guarantees a certain sum. Say, I am willing to, say, lend the fund on demand $500,000 liras in case it is short of liquidity, but I will lend it only temporarily to be returned to me, say, in 2 or 3 months. Now, by these two guarantees, the guarantee of liquidity and the guarantee of losses, the lenders to the fund are assured that they can withdraw their money anytime they want. They are provided assurance through these two guarantees. The guarantors of losses is rather unusual category. As I'll explain later, they can, when their guarantee is needed, that is, when a guarantor of losses is told by the monetary fund, monetary Waqf, that we have lost, say, 1 million liras by non-repayment, please compensate us for it. That guarantor of loss can pay it if he wishes out of his Zakat. This is entirely valid from a fiqh point of view, as I will explain later on in this lecture. Now, by what types of modes of financing do we provide finance to the provide microfinance to eligible recipients? Some people will think that we should provide, since it is type of help, we should provide finance as interest-free loans. But this is valid. If we can provide interest-free loans, that's great. But this is not a sustainable mode of financing because the Waqf has its own expenses. It needs to cover its running costs. Also, we want the Waqf to expand and become larger and serving more and more people who need. So it is acceptable and desirable to provide finance by other means along with Qard Hasan. We give Qard Hasan to the weakest only to a limited extent, but we provide finance through other Islamic modes of finance. For instance, term sales, a sale for a deferred price is what they call murabaha now, is one form of Islamic finance that generates income to the provider of finance who is seller of a good or a service. So this generates, and similar other types of Islamic finance, generate some income to the Waqf. However, the terms of financing will be very favorable to the recipient. That is, they will be much more favorable than what the commercial financing, Islamic financing is giving to regular people who are not poor. So basically, we will sorry, I see the share. نعم. So my proposition is that monetary waqf should provide commercial types of Islamic financing that generate income to the waqf, along with some qard hasad, but it will provide these other types of financing on terms very favorable to the recipient. Now, let us review the main providers of funds to the Waqf. We have the permanent donors, which I mentioned earlier. Of course, we want as many of these as possible. Then we have what needs some explanation, lenders of qard hasan to the Waqf. Those people hopefully will be numerous people of average means. They would like to do good by providing their extra cash to the Waqf on a qard hasan or interest-free loan to the Waqf. And the Waqf will use their funds along with its own other resources to provide microfinance. My proposition is that we can call on many people who have current accounts with the bank, with their own bank. They can, by arrangement, the monetary waqf can have arrangement with major banks in a particular country, that it opens an account in every major bank. Now, suppose I am willing to lend the monetary waqf 2 million liras of extra cash, which I have. I can give instruction to my bank whenever my current account exceeds a certain level, I would like to provide 2 million liras interest-free loan to the Waqf, which has an account with you. The bank will, just by a click, whenever my account goes above the limit I set, will lend the account of the monetary waqf 2 million liras from my account. Now, if my account falls below the limit I set, the bank is instructed to collect from the monetary waqf the difference. So basically, I will be sharing the extra cash in my current account with the monetary waqf. Of course, I am doing this because I am having the assurance of the waqf that it has guarantors of liquidity. It has also guarantors of losses. So I am providing a loan to the waqf, which has no risk of default. The case of liquidity is simple. The guarantor of liquidity is ready, as I explained before, to provide a temporary loan to the fund only if the fund faces liquidity shortage. And this liquidity provider, guarantor, will be providing his loan maybe for a few months until the liquidity shortage is over. The guarantors of losses need some explanation. These guarantors of losses are like someone who is providing a commercial kafala or guarantee. Say your friend wants to buy a car. The car dealer says, I don't know you. You bring along someone to guarantee that you pay the deferred price. He pays the deferred price if you fail to do so. So the guarantor is basically not paying initially anything. He is standing ready to pay in case the original obligor is unable to pay. Those guarantors of losses will do exactly that. Only when the recipient of finance is in default, is unable to pay back, they will donate an equal amount to cover the loss to the monetary waqf. Now notice something very important. The recipient of microfinance, if he is unable to return it, in many cases, the definition of gharim applied to him. The gharimin is one category of the 8 categories of recipients of zakah mentioned in the Quran subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah At-Tawbah. The ayah which says, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينَ. This ayah, one category of the 8 is al-gharimin. Al-gharimin are those who are overburdened with debt. They contracted debt for legitimate reason, personal or social, but are unable to pay it back. These are lawful recipients of zakah. So a guarantor of losses, when he is called upon by the monetary waqf to make up for a loss of default, he can, in many cases, count what he pays as part of his zakah. Now, you know, zakah essentially It's not permissible to lend it to the poor. We have to give it to the poor. So you cannot finance this monetary waqf directly by zakah, but you can be a guarantor of losses. And when you pay anything on account of a loss through default of one recipient, this is permissible to pay through your zakah. Now, one thing very interesting, suppose the default rate for recipients of microfinance is 5%. It means that if I am a guarantor of losses and tell the Waqf, I am ready to pay 5 dinars whenever default by a recipient occurs. My 5 dinars can attract to the Waqf loans of 100 dinars, because my 5 dinars can cover the expected losses that may be faced by loans of 100 dinars. This is a multiplier effect which increases the reward, the thawab of the guarantor of losses. He is paying from his zakah, but getting extra thawab because he is helping many other people to support the monetary waqf. So I think many people would love to be guarantors of losses. Now, what are the possible hurdles in the face of running successfully such a monetary waqf? Of course, one initial hurdle is to have an initial permanent donations by some good people. But this is, I believe, is a transitional, temporary hurdle, only temporary. Why? Because once any monetary waqf is well organized, effectively monitored, and shows practical results by its recipients becoming self-dependent, I am sure numerous people would be willing to put their money in that waqf, to lend to the waqf. So this lack of funds, I think, will be only a temporary initial hurdle. What is a permanent challenge is to have collaboration from engineers and business people to provide consultation to the fund, to generate ideas of many micro projects which are suitable to the poor. This generating a backlog of ideas of suitable microfinance projects suitable for the particular recipients and their economic environment. This is a continuous challenge. And those who will provide this advice will be providing it free. A businessman has usually many ideas on his mind, so he can give very bright and practical ideas for such microfinance potential projects. Another challenge, which I didn't mention in writing, but I will mention it verbally now, is that you cannot just provide finance only. You need to provide something along with finance, which is training a poor person who comes to you. He usually have very limited skills or no skill at all. He doesn't know, even if he opens a small shop or he puts some goods on the cart which he pushes, he doesn't have much skill in keeping accounts, in calculating his initial expenses and receipts, etc. He needs some training. So you need some financial training and managerial training, elementary, suitable for the particular person. You need also, very important, moral training. You have to instill in this recipient that, look, amana, trustworthiness is very important for you in this life, and when you go back to your Lord in the hereafter, we are providing this money to you because we trust you. You can probably deceive us, but you cannot deceive Lord Almighty. You cannot deceive him. So please act in a good way with us, and we hope that we are able to stand on your own feet after a little while, and you become a donor to our fund. You will later on provide loans to us to help others. So anyhow, this additional training will be an extremely important aspect of such a monetary waqf. It will provide money, microfinance, and reasonable training. One other thing which I left out of writing, I was afraid I may run short of time, I can mention now. Alternative structures. What I proposed here is a waqf structure, but designed in such a way that it can be supported in part by the share of gharimin, of people in debt in zakah. It's a money waqf, but can be supported by one element of zakah, which is the people burdened with debt, al-gharimin. But this setup is may not be suitable for every particular country or community. We may find in some countries that the legal framework may not allow for waqf. In fact, some countries in Africa have this situation. They have no legal structure to protect and supervise the waqf. So, or sometime in some other countries you will find the waqf is so overburdened by administrative hurdles and requirements that you basically, you will find it hard to establish a waqf. So one other alternative is to establish, instead of a waqf, a cooperative society that permits mutual loans by its members, a cooperative society that permits mutual loans between its members. Now, this society will be composed of people who are basically donors and who are lending to the society, to the cooperative. They are the providers of resources, whether permanent or temporary. All also will be invited to this particular cooperative potential recipients of microfinance. We announce, if you have a good project or you need eligible for microfinance, apply to us. If we find you acceptable, we will give you membership in our society, in our cooperative. Of course, the providers of funds will not, they will be giving to the cooperative and not taking money from it. Those who are recipients, as members of that cooperative, they can receive finance, as I explained. So what I want to say, I have explained in this brief paper the logic behind every component of the proposed Waqf. Now, since you know the function of each component, you need not do it as I suggested. I am sure many of you will have many different ideas of achieving these same elements of the structure by other entirely different means. That's okay. The idea ultimately is to have one method of helping the poor who are able to depend on themselves if given initial help by a loan or by a financing of other means. So why this such a Waqf or monetary Waqf is a very good support for Zakah in general, because Zakah, there is so much demand on help, more than the available Zakah in most of the time. If we can distinguish from among the needy and the poor those who can be helped by a loan rather than by giving Zakat to them, we should help them through a loan. This has obvious advantage. You are saving Zakah money for people who cannot pay back any financing. They are permanently poor or sick. Number two, you are giving the recipient of microfinance self-dignity, that he is able to depend on himself, even partially, to support himself, which is a high priority in Islam. Islam instructs the Muslims that each person must be able to support through his own efforts and resources himself, his family, and his relatives if he has extra. So if a person is unable to support himself, but we can, through microfinance, help him support himself, we are basically help him to perform his fard ain, the personal obligatory duty. So we are giving him, through microfinance, dignity and self-dependence, and he is achieving one high priority personal goal that Sharia instructs every Muslim to have, which is self-dependence. So I will close now at this and be ready to receive your suggestions and questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Zarqa, for your inspiring talk. And I'm sure we will receive so many questions. I received one and I will share it with you. The first question is, can you elaborate a bit the point that guarantors of losses can pay the sums they pledge from their zakat, especially from the point of view of main conditions of Waqf in Islamic law?
Okay, now I have a question about the guarantors of losses being able to pay from their zakah. What they pay to guarantee losses can be counted in their own zakah. You know, the Gharimin category is well known in fiqh of zakah. You can see it directly in the ayah of Surah At-Tawbah, ayah I think 60. There are 8 categories. If you check up the meaning of Gharimin, you will find there are people who have incurred debt and cannot pay it back, even if the debt is for personal reasons, legitimate personal reasons. Someone needing food, or maybe has to have an operation and has no money, he borrowed money, but later on he couldn't repay it, he's a gharim. Even if he borrowed for commercial purposes, that is, he needs to practice some kind of trade, maybe to buy a carriage and put some little items to sell in the market. Again, this is personal, he is eligible as a gharim if he cannot pay back. So there is no, in fact, this particular point, I have checked with a member of the Fatwa Committee of Awqaf in Kuwait, Dr. Ahmad Al-Hajji Al-Kurdi, who is a friend, and he is a student of my late father, Sheikh Mustafa Zarqa. Now, Dr. Al-Kurdi checked with me and advised me that yes, this is definitely valid. So basically, there is no Sharia issue with covering al-gharimin, in this case, by payment of zakah. Now, from the point of view of Waqf, this Waqf is providing a very valuable service to the recipients. And what is wrong with the Waqf receiving, if one recipient of finance is unable to pay back, not through fraud, but he's unable, maybe got sick or lost or whatever, he is a gharim. So there is no problem in the Waqf receiving this money. You see, it is covering the loss. Yani you can liken it. Suppose I have a house or donated as Waqf for the poor. Now, suppose the house needs maintenance, some part of the wall cracked. If someone donates to provide the engineering and materials to straighten and support the wall, there is nothing wrong with the Waqf accepting this. So I don't think it will be at all a problem from the fiqh point of view of the Waqf managing this particular type of donations, the guarantors of losses. And in fact, I think if the establishers of Waqf are innovative and they may, in fact, make maybe an emblem, someone who can put on his jacket, I am a guarantor of losses. They give him something he can put to be proud that he is guarantor to this Waqf. And it will encourage others who will see it on his jacket, a sign that this fellow is a guarantor of Waqf. This is something to be proud of. So the same with guarantors of liquidity. They are providing a very valuable service. And you see these two categories are earning hasanat while they are sleeping, because they may not, maybe in the whole year, he may be called upon once to provide something, a liquidity or a payment, but all the time he is earning reward from his Lord, because he encouraging so many people to support Waqf through loans.
Okay. The second question is how you have you taken Ottoman cash Waqf as a model to establish what you proposed?
I am asked whether I have taken Ottoman cash Waqf as a model. No, in fact, when I wrote this, which was in 2006 or 7, when I first thought of the idea and put it down on paper, I was not well aware of the cash Waqf. Of course, I know the Waqf rules in general. Most schools, except the Malikis, and especially the Hanafis, essentially they do not approve of a cash Waqf. And for good reasons, because cash is very easily embezzled. It doesn't have the permanence that real estate has. So initially, all fuqaha, they want Waqf to be as permanent as possible. So they will opt for real estate as the most durable and least likely asset to be squandered. But especially now, of course, later on I came to know that, in fact, the Ottoman cash Waqf was approved. So this is, it was new to me at the time. Later, after 2006, I came to know that, yes, it has been practiced. Basically, another sort of another issue in this Waqf is the temporary nature of the donations. It's not only cash Waqf, but also some of the cash is not permanent. Now, Al-Malikis clearly, and the Fiqh Academy, International Fiqh Academy, clearly approved temporary Waqf. So in this case, we need the Waqf to be cash, and also we need it to be temporary. That is, say, I want to lend this Waqf, and I find that I have, say, a certain sum of money. I can give it as a loan for 1 year to the Waqf. It means after 1 year, the Waqf will pay me back. So it is no longer Waqf. The money I gave, it came back to me. So it is temporary. Some fuqaha earlier did not approve, but some, including the Malikis, did approve. And the Fiqh Academy and several other current fuqaha do approve of temporary Waqf, not only cash. That is, suppose you have a car, and this our proposed Waqf need car for the administrator to move around. So you say, I am willing to lend my car to you for 1 year for the purpose of serving this particular Waqf. That's fine. That's fine, temporary in nature. So this temporary aspect is also useful. The point is, through this, you make it easy for anybody to earn a reward from Allah and also to help his fellow human beings who are in need. He can loan any sum of money for a limited time, or he can lend anything that the particular Waqf can use, like a car. Or he can, of course, give permanently whatever he would like. So you are giving through this Waqf a chance to everyone, no matter how much his limited means, to do something good, which is good.
Okay. We have the third question. It has 3 parts. There has been a long-lasting experience of monetary Waqf, especially through the Ottoman experience. In order to minimize the risk of loss and cost of administration, Waqf generally tended to provide these funds through more risk-averse.
I will definitely, noting the comment about the Ottoman Waqf, whatever we can, as I told you, I am providing elements like a mechano. You can connect them in a different way or bring another piece from other. The idea is that as long as we know the purpose of what each element, the function it performs, we should innovate. I am sure many of you can come up with several very innovative ideas to change the proposal, put it in a more practical way for a particular community or particular economic situation. So this, by all means, is desirable. That is, don't take it as a fixed structure. No, the elements are clear. Temporary, it uses loans, it's monetary. It should provide training and should provide innovative ideas. One of the big challenges is to have a large number of potentially good small-scale micro projects, because the people who come asking for your help, most of the time, they have no ideas, they have no skills or very little skills. So you have to find the innovative engineers and businessmen who can suggest to them ideas, and from his experience, he knows that these ideas can work. So this is a really big challenge.
Okay. I mean, this question I actually had 3 parts. So the last part of it is in terms of Sharia point of
view. I would definitely one question here regarding the modes of finance.
Yes.
The modes of finance. I will strongly disapprove in this monetary waqf of using in modes of finance which are subject to a lot of criticism. I am not going to mention, but you know, some of the modes practiced by some Islamic financial have a lot of criticism. We should avoid them. We are making this waqf not only to help the poor and to get the reward from Allah. We don't want to do it by methods which are not well accepted by religion. No, we should avoid that. We should try to make it pure to get the barakah of abiding by Allah's rule. And actually, it's very easy in this. Those who are risk averse so much, let them go their own way. But here we are risking some money to help our fellows who are poor. We want to do it in a clean and good way to get them and to get ourselves the blessings of Allah. So this dubious rollover and aina and what you know should not be part of the modes used by such a fund. By the way, Bay al-Wafa, as you know, has been approved by Majalla, but has initially been disapproved even in the Hanafi school. So Bay al-Wafa is out of this. And also the International Fiqh Academy has many years before, more than 10, 15 years ago, I remember in Jeddah, the meeting was which we attended. The International Fiqh Academy disapproved of Bay al-Wafa. Although what Islamic financial institutions are doing now sometimes is worse than Bay al-Wafa. But let this be what we are proposing in this waqf is to have something clean and blessed. So we should follow many modes of financing which are quite good, and inshallah Allah will make such a project possible.
Okay, another question. What if the clients...
The question is, if clients know there is a guarantee for the borrowed money, would not the lease lead to high default rate? I think this is a valid objection. This is a valid question, that when someone knows he's not going to be put in jail or disturbed if he doesn't pay back, he may well decide willingly not to pay back. But this is part of the risk you have to take. It is the same as dealing with members of your family. Of course, when you are helping your son, you don't know whether he will grow up to be a good person or a bad person, but you are willing to take a chance. And with Allah's help, he will be good. So, and that's also we need to emphasize the moral training among recipients, and the administrator of such a waqf needs to be an experienced person who can check applicants and check their background. And of course, you can still use the innovative feature which Grameen innovated by asking for social guarantees, not money guarantees. So if I apply, they tell me, you go and bring 5 of your friends to pledge that if you don't pay, we can collect from them. So if I ever think of not paying, I will be very much embarrassed in front of my family members or friends. So Grameen has used this social guarantee to enforce repayment, which was innovative. And I think we can use it. There is nothing wrong with that. Kafala is known in Sharia. And you can, in addition to your own guarantors of losses, ask the applicant, we want you to bring some of your friends or well-known people to guarantee you, and we may collect from them. That's it can be also added to the fund. You know, this is what they call the moral hazard. That's what economists call moral hazard.
Okay, thank you. And another question, why there is no real role of Waqf institution in Muslim world in development of sector and empowering the needy?
Why there is no real role of Waqf institution in Islamic world in development of sector and empowering the needy? Of course, maybe Turkey is an exception where you are still Waqf. In other countries, the several military governments aggressed against the Awqaf. And basically in some countries from 1950s, almost no new Awqaf are established because people felt that if we establish a Waqf, number one, as happened in my country, Syria, first military coup by Hosni Zaim, one of his first decisions was to liquidate the family Waqf. And in fact, my mother's family, Al-Amiri, their Waqf was liquidated. So basically, this sort of unhospitable legal framework in many countries discouraged people from establishing a new Waqf. But if the legal framework is corrected and given legitimacy and assurance that if you make Waqf, we will respect it and we will not aggress against it, I am sure people want to do good. Human heart has tremendous capacity to do good, but trust is absolutely important. Unless you can provide trust, people will withhold. People will give if they trust. So establish trust, you will see a lot of people giving a lot of resources. Just make sure it goes to rightful recipients, not wastefully. People will, and you can see it all over the world. but the religious people are even more inclined to do so. But even totally irreligious people, Allah put in the human heart this tendency to compassion, to like, to give, to help the needy. So we should utilize this, what Allah put, this natural tendency in the human heart.
Another question, how to mitigate risk in Waqf operations? What do you propose for the...
I covered all the questions you posed to me. Of course, how to mitigate the risk of Waqf operations. What do you propose for this to mitigate the risk? This is a very good question. And my proposition is do what in the USA, they are very innovative people. And you know, the tech sector is very high risk. Although some technology companies, especially IT, succeeded beyond imagination, but hundreds and hundreds lost money. So they have what they call, and let me recall the name, venture capital. Venture capital provides finance to numerous innovative projects, knowing from experience that out of maybe 25 projects, 2 or 3 succeed. But they succeed so well, they cover up the losses of the remaining 20. We can do this in the context of this Waqf. That is, when you are providing finance to recipients, you can provide some of them who are promising, and they maybe after a while you say, I'm willing to provide you more finance. We trust you. We found you are behaving well. You are doing well. We are willing to finance you by participatory modes, maybe by mudaraba or some other means. In this case, if you provide finance to say 100 of such small ventures, some of them may succeed so well that out of the participatory modes you have selected with them, you get good income to support the Waqf. So this will be a practical and very sensible, good hedge. Do what the venture capitalists are doing, but you do it for the small people. And of course, you need very wise managers. This is the most scarce and honest manager. Honesty and experience in management is one of the greatest and very scarce skills all over the world. So if you get such people to be involved in this Waqf, you should get a good future.
Thank you. The last question, some scholars allow to take an additional amount stemming from the effect of inflation in Qard Hasan. What should Waqf do in that regard?
The question is, some scholars allow taking back more than the Qard al-Hasan to compensate for inflation. What the Waqf should do in this regard? Notice that some forms of Islamic finance practiced at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, not new. Provide you with inflation protection automatically. Take a salam. I am a farmer. If you provide me finance by advancing me money or seeds and fertilizer, etc., you will be collecting from me part of my crop later on. You, as a provider of funds, giving cash up front, you are protected against inflation, because under inflation, the amount of crop I promise to give you will be worth more later on. In fact, this sometimes can work to be too good. Too good. How? They faced this problem in Sudan. They were under pretty high inflation at the time of Numeri. And in Sudan, they provided, the government pressured the Islamic banks there to provide finance to farmers. They were reluctant to do so, but the government pressured them to do. They did provide, but inflation was so high at the time, when after providing the finance, the price of the potential crops went very high, so much so that the farmers complained to the government. We are giving them now portion of the crop, and they are realizing very high profits on their initial money advanced. It was so much so that they, Sheikh Darir, Allah yarhamahu, Sheikh Sadiq Darir, head of the one major committee there, the Islamic Faisal Bank, head of the Sharia committee, they made an innovative solution. They make salam as usual, but added a proviso. If the provider of funds makes more than a rate of return so much, he will donate willingly on his own. He will donate back to the farmer whatever is above so much. So here you see very strong inflation protection. When you are dealing with commodities, you are protected real assets. But when you are advancing money, you are facing the loss of purchasing value, purchasing power. But no fiqh academy accepted retrieving more money than you advance, because even though it has valid reason, it will be misused. This will be the way to legitimize interest on loans. Those who are afraid of inflation so much, they can advance whatever they provide finance, advance it in a fungible good, which is usable by the recipient. So if he is a farmer, instead of giving him amount of money, give him seeds. Or if he is, if you advance a fungible good, it had to be repaid fungible good, the same amount. So this is one possible inflation protection. But the inflation question is complicated, and any simple answer, you can find a problem with it. So inflation and how to address it had to be a separate issue. But basically, I say again, salam and istisna are inflation protected.
Thank you very much, Professor, for this talk. I would like to thank you on behalf of
the last question.
Yes, and I would like to thank you for this talk and on behalf of the center and all audience. And do you have anything to say? As last words?
My great wish is that some innovative, energetic person among you try to set up such a fund, a monetary waqf. It need not be in Turkey. If you find it needed here, great, alhamdulillah. But you have many countries, poor countries, in which you are giving help to, in Somalia and others. If someone can think of such a project of waqf in that particular poor country, this will be great. And in fact, it can be subject to real case studies. And for you, I'm sure you know that microfinance is now a huge area where you can gain from international experience, from mistakes and from successes. So I am sure we can implement such a project. And I do hope and pray some of you will be inspired to implement it, even at small scale, just to test the idea. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you very much. Again, Ramadan Kareem to you and all audience. Hope to meet you all again next week at the same time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.